Greetings, viewers. The pen for this episode is a Nemosine Singularity. So this pen comes in a lot of different finishes and colors, etc. So this one is a really cool multicolored one with lots of black and orange and blues in it. There's also a demonstrator version, which I have right here. It's available in a bunch of different finishes, several different nibs, etc. I say available, I believe I should say used to be available. This pen has basically been discontinued, but you can get stock of it available through a few different vendors, and you do see them around. So this pen was sold for a few years, but this particular model was discontinued fairly recently. It's got a pretty nice cap band that meets a barrel band, so they sort of come almost together, so that's kind of a nice little effect there. And it just says Nemosine engraved on the cap band, and it has a nice clip that is very, very springy, not spring loaded, but quite springy. And the finial on the cap actually comes to a sort of a cone, and it's with a clip band around it. It's actually quite nice looking there as well. This finish is really quite something. I really like this this material. It's basically this sort of speckled blue, orange, black with a little bit of reds and browns thrown in. Really quite nice. The reds and the oranges pick up a little bit of chatoyancy, which looks nice. A very quite attractive looking pen. It takes 1.5 turns to open. It posts really quite cleanly, and reveals the nib, which is a pretty nice looking nib with a really cool kind of floral / butterfly pattern. It says M for medium and made in Germany. This is a medium nib. Nice big hefty nib for a pen that isn't a particularly huge pen. As you can see, this pen is pretty average size. Here it is compared to a Lamy Safari and a Pilot Metropolitan. Not a particularly heavy pen either, weighs 16 grams. As you suspect, this is a cartridge converter filled pen. It comes with this fairly nice converter that actually you might not be able to see it here, but it has a little plastic agitator bead inside the converter. You probably could eyedropper this if you really wanted to, but these threads look a little coarse to me for eyedropping, but there's certainly no metal inside that I would think would preclude that if you really wanted to. The section is a pretty nice section. It's got a little bit of flare on the end there, so it gives you kind of a nice grip. These threads here are absolutely totally smooth, and you don't really feel anything at all. It's quite comfortable to hold, but again, like a pretty light pen, so you probably want to post it. Not an overly long pen and not an overly heavy pen, so not a lot of reason not to post this particular pen. One other thing that's worth pointing out is a very curious design choice in this pen, and it's not obvious unless you look closely, but the threads for the cap are on the section, not on the barrel, which is very unusual, and I don't think I've seen that on too many cartridge converter pens. So a typical cartridge converter pen with a screw cap like this Wing Sung pen, you unscrew the cap. Here are the threads for the cap, but they are on the barrel, not on the section, as you can see. So that is a bit of a difference. I don't know why they would have done that. There's one obvious disadvantage and no real advantage that I could tell. The obvious disadvantage would be if you don't have this screwed down very tightly, you screw the cap on. If you go to unscrew the cap, you could theoretically unscrew the section along with it. So here, let's try that. I'm only going to lightly screw that on. We'll screw the cap on, and then when we go to unscrew, see, it takes the whole thing off. Now, granted, that hasn't really happened to me. Might not terribly likely. Oh, there you go. Might not terribly likely happen to you, but it's just an odd design choice that I do not see why they would have made that. So that is something to take in mind, especially if you're thinking of eyedropping it. So Again, think twice if you're going to eyedropper this pen. So that probably covers the major parts of this quite attractive and quite nice Nemosine Singularity pen. But pens were meant to write. So let's see how this writes right now. Okay, folks, what we're writing with here is a Nemosine Singularity. And this is a medium steel nib. This writes quite smooth and quite nice. Really, really does. It's very, very smooth, actually. Not terribly wet though, so I'd say this is maybe a tiny bit dry. But again, this is very smooth though, so no complaints there on the smoothness. I would, for my personal taste, I would like it a little bit wetter, and it's also a little fine for a medium nib, especially a German-made medium nib. I would expect it to be a tiny bit broader than that, but otherwise, I'm pleased with it. You do not get flex with this though. This is stiff. So don't expect any kind of flex with this. But again, they don't market it as having any flex at all. So no misrepresentation there at all. But definitely a smooth, pleasant overall writing experience. And I really like it quite a bit. Definitely a nice light pen. See, you check around, see if you can pick one or two of these up. They're really pretty nice pens. Like I said, this particular model was discontinued, but you should still be able to find it around. And it comes in a bunch of different nib sizes. This demonstrator one that I have here actually has a 1.1 millimeter stub. Also writes pretty nicely as well. So all in all, a pretty nice pen, and I'm quite pleased with it. So that's really about all to say about this pen. Let's talk about this ink a little bit, shall we? This ink is also from a Nemosine. So this ink is Nemosine Solar Storm. And this is just a pretty orange. You know, it's a attractive shade of orange. It's a bit on the light side, and as a consequence of that, you may want to use it in a slightly broader pen. It depends on your personal taste. I tend to go with broader pens on lighter colored inks for kind of obvious reasons. You don't get a lot in the way of shading or variation here. There's a little tiny bits going on here and there, but I wouldn't call this a shading ink too much. One thing I will say about this ink that is particularly cool is the bottle. This ink comes in this really cool, sort of very heavy glass bottle. It's 35 milliliters of ink. I just think this bottle is really nice. It's like a smaller version of the, almost like the Iroshizuku bottles almost. It's just a really attractive looking bottle, and I really like the way it's packaged. And this is not a particularly expensive ink, so go look around. Birmingham Pen Company sells these inks, so check them out, and it's really, really cool. So another couple of interesting facts about this ink. So if you look at the box, two things about the box. It says made in Slovenia, so that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen an ink made in Slovenia. But another thing, and I don't know if you're like me, but one thing I do when I get a bottle of ink with a box, before I put the ink back in the box, I tend to fold these flaps in and then put the bottle of ink in that way. It's just that way I don't have to like deal with the flaps when I take it back out again. Little tip, do not do that with this ink. Because the way the proportions of this ink in this box are designed, if you do that and then slide the ink in the box, these two flaps are basically going to lock under the cap, and you will have a dickens of a time getting it back out of the box. So if you I know this is going to sound a little odd, but don't fold the flaps back in when you put it back in the box. I'll just save you the trouble that I had. In any case, great ink, really nice bottle. Relatively inexpensive. I don't really actually remember what I paid for these, but it was really quite a reasonable price, and it's just one of the more attractive ink bottles at any price that I have seen. And it's a nice ink to begin with. Like I said, this particular one, so Nemosine makes a whole bunch of colors, so, and they all come in these really nice bottles. This is a little bit light, but like I said, you know, depending on your personal taste, maybe put it in a slightly broader nib, and it'll work pretty nicely. One color that I do think it's worth comparing this orange to, this Nemosine Solar Storm to, is an ink called, that I reviewed in a video a little while ago. This is Birmingham Albert Einstein Relative Cadmium. They are very, very, very similar. The Albert Einstein Relative Cadmium is a little bit more of a peachy sort of orange, whereas this is more of an apricot kind of orange. If I had to say, no, actually I take that back. I'm going to revise that. The Albert Einstein is more of an apricot kind of orange, whereas this is more of an orange. But they are somewhat similar oranges, as you can see. Well, I think that might just about do it for this episode. What do we think? I think so. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, please subscribe, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up. It is truly appreciated. And as always, until we see each other next time, have a good day. Bye-bye.